Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. How should we, the world's largest democracy, indeed the mother of democracies, if you believe that, respond to the cold-blooded murder of Atiq Ahmed and his brother Ashraf whilst in police custody? In other words, whilst under the protection of the police. That's the key issue I shall discuss today with one of the most illustrious former judges of our Supreme Court, Justice Madan Lokur. Justice Lokur, how do you view the killing of Atiq Ahmed and his brother Ashraf whilst in police custody, and according to the Hindu newspaper, whilst surrounded by a dozen policemen?
Well, Karan, to say the least, it is shocking, right? There have been custodial deaths in the past where the police itself, beats up an accused or a convict, and then that person dies. But I think this is probably among the first few cases that I have come across where, while a person is in police custody, a third person comes and commits a murder. Right? This is extremely unusual, and it is shocking because the police is supposed to protect the person, and here they have exposed that person to be killed by a third person.
Let's discuss some of the details of this horrific incident. The Hindu newspaper says it happened at 10:30 at night on Saturday when the two men were being taken for a medical checkup. Now, practically all jails in the country shut their gates variously between 6 and 8 p.m. So the first question I want to ask is, isn't it very unusual that these people were being taken for a medical checkup at 10:30 at night when presumably and probably clearly the gates of the jail where they were housed were shut?
Yes, it is very strange. You see, it's not very clear whether they were in police custody in some other case or they were in judicial custody. Now, if they were in judicial custody, the police must have moved an application for taking them into police custody. But whatever it is, taking a person for medical examination at 10:30 at night is very, very odd. I mean, what was the urgency? Couldn't the medical examination have been done the next day? That's one. The second, if they were in judicial custody, right? Again, like I said, it's not very clear. Is it that the jail had no hospital where, or a dispensary or something where some kind of a checkup could be conducted? The whole thing is very, very strange.
I
The
can
third,
clarify that point for you, Justice Lokur. According to
yeah,
the Indian Express, and I'm relying on the Indian Express, they were in fact in police custody, which was due to end on Sunday at 5 p.m., which is why they were being taken, it's said, for a medical checkup before they were released from police custody into judicial custody. But the question you're raising right still remains. Why take them at 10:30 at night when you can do it in the morning?
yeah, right. I mean, they could have, if they were to be produced in court on Sunday evening at 5 o'clock or maybe a little earlier, surely they could have been taken for a medical examination at on Sunday morning. What was the great urgency in taking them at night?
Absolutely. Let me then come to a second critical issue. The Express reports that the killers had no problem approaching the men and fired at them at point blank range straight at their heads. In fact, the Express has a photograph on its front page of the gun literally touching the temple of Atiq Ahmed. The Times of India reports that the shooting lasted for 22 minutes and 14 rounds were fired. Again, going back to the Express, it says that the police ran away. Doesn't this raise pretty serious questions about the functioning of the police, as well as how seriously the police performed their duty of protecting Atiq and Ashraf?
Well, it's not very clear. Were the police armed? If they were not armed, that again is very, very strange, considering the fact that it had been said time and again by Atiq that he is likely to be eliminated, right? He even went to the Supreme Court to say that he's going to be eliminated. So I would imagine that the police should have been armed when they were taking him to the hospital at 10:30 at night. If they were not armed, it's very surprising. If they were armed, there is no reason why they should not have fired at the attackers, right? The attackers, it seems from newspaper reports, threw their guns, which were semi-automatic, weapons, and surrendered to the police. Now, how is it that the police, just didn't open fire and, waited for these people to surrender? I mean, the whole thing is very, very strange. And now look at it from another point of view. Normally, in a situation like this, the police would take the accused or the alleged killers into custody and ask for a police remand. But in this case, it seems that they have been put in judicial custody for 14 days. Now, this thing is, what does it mean? That the police don't want to investigate? If they wanted to investigate, they would have asked for police remand. Everybody, in these kind of cases, the police ask for police remand. Why in this case was that not asked for?
Indeed, the fact that the police did not ask for police remand raises the question, do they not feel a need to investigate? And if the answer is they don't feel a need to investigate, that suggests they know who the killers are and they know why the killing was done. And that leads to the suspicion that there is something more here than meets the eye. I won't go further because I don't want to be invidious, but clearly it leads to the suspicion there is more here than meets the eye.
Oh, yes, certainly. I think there is much more than meets the eye. And, I think that the entire episode will have to be properly investigated. I'm not sure whether the 3-member commission will be able to get to the bottom of what has happened, right? And they've been given 2 months' time. If you remember the encounter killing that took place in Hyderabad some time back, that was also chaired by a retired judge of the Supreme Court. And I think it took almost a year, maybe 8 months or 9 months or something, for the report to come out. So here, I don't think in 2 months they can do anything about it. And, it's probably just buying time.
Let me raise a third aspect of this very horrific incident with you. All of this was captured on videos because the media was there. The Indian Express reports that the media was even allowed to question the two men as they were walking towards the hospital, and this in turn allowed the killers to masquerade as media men. Should the police have permitted the media to surround these two men? And secondly, I presume the media could only have been there at 10:30 at night because they'd been tipped off by the police. Otherwise, the media is not hanging around a hospital at 10:30 at night.
Yeah, yes, you're right. It's very strange. Well, assuming for the sake of argument that the media had been tipped off, what about these killers? They were not part of the media. How did they come to know about it unless they had some contacts with the media or they had some contacts with the police? Were they also keeping some kind of a watch? The whole thing is extremely mysterious.
This is why I said, Justice Lokur, that there's more here than meets the eye. You've put your finger on another element of what is deeply disturbing. If the media was tipped off, which one presumes is the case, because otherwise they wouldn't be there at 10:30 at night, how and who tipped off the killers? And the fact that the killer somehow knew raises another suspicion, because the same killers were not taken into police remand, they were put in judicial custody, which suggests the police don't want to investigate. Both of these are deeply disturbing because they raise worrying questions about the police's connection or purported connection or possible connection with the killers.
Yes, and you see, look at it in another way. These killers were posing as journalists, right? They came with a camera. So they knew that the media is going to be there, right? How did they know that? Where did they get the camera from? Where did they get these semi-automatic weapons, right? So they had a lot of information. The alleged killers had a lot of information, and they made good use of it because they wanted to target, Atiq and Ashraf, and they did.
I won't.
So, yeah, I would definitely go along with you and say that there is much more to it than meets the eye.
And sadly, a lot of that has to do with the way the police have handled this or are suspected to have some sort of information link with the killers. That is the worrying suspicion. It's only a suspicion, but it's a deeply worrying one.
Yes, yes. I don't know. Were the police armed? Do any of the newspaper reports say that they were armed? If they were not armed,
no report specifically says they were either armed or not armed, but certainly if they had arms, they never used them. And that's
why did that happen? I mean, first of all, if they were armed, why did they not use the arms? Right? Second, if they were not armed, why were they taking these two people who apparently faced death threats, and I'm sure the police must have been aware of it, at 10:30 at night with about a dozen policemen, none of them being armed? I mean, this is amazing.
For the sake of the audience, I'll sum up before I move to the next question, the three critical issues you raised about the police, which are a cause of suspicion and a cause of concern and anxiety. They're only questions about the police, but they're deeply worrying questions. First of all, why did the police not take these three killers into police custody? Why were they sent to judicial custody? Does the police not want to investigate? And clearly, if the police doesn't want to investigate, it suggests the police knows everything. Secondly, if the police were armed, why didn't they fire and kill the killers? And if they weren't armed, why weren't they armed? Because clearly this is a man who was under threat. And thirdly, how did the killers know that they were being taken to the hospital at 10:30 at night? How did the killers know that the media would be present and they could masquerade as media? Were the killers in some way tipped off? Did the police in some way tip them off directly? Or perhaps is there someone in the police who's linked to them? Those are all questions of concern, questions of suspicion, but they clearly arise, don't they, Justice Lokur?
Yes, I would add a fourth question to that. Where was the need to take these people to the hospital at 10:30 at night? Could they not have been taken in the morning? Was there some great urgency? Now, you look at the whole thing, you take them at 10:30 at night, people are tipped off, journalists are tipped off, killers apparently are tipped off. The police may or may not be armed, we don't know. They don't fire at these people, okay? They may not want to kill them, but certainly injure them. And they don't even take them into, police custody. They ask for judicial remand. The whole thing is very, very, very strange.
One point I can make, at least two newspaper reports suggest that one of the police constables whose hand was being held, I believe, by Atiq or possibly by Ashraf, got injured as well. That clearly suggests that if the police did not fire back, that they did not have arms, because normally if one of their own is injured, the police's instinct is to fire back. So either they didn't have arms, or for some inexplicable reason, even though they did have arms, they still restrained themselves, even though their colleague had been injured. That is itself deeply concerning.
Yes, absolutely.
Let me come, Justice Lokur, to something else. You raised it a moment ago. I'll bring it up more bluntly now. As recently as the 28th of March, Atiq Ahmed approached the Supreme Court claiming there was a threat to his life and seeking protection during police custody.
His counsel said, and I'm quoting the counsel, it would be a death warrant if the court rejected his petition. The Supreme Court refused, saying, and I'm quoting the Supreme Court, the state machinery will take care of you. Today we know Atiq Ahmed was right, the court was wrong. Has this left the Supreme Court embarrassed?
Well, I would be prepared to give the Supreme Court the benefit of doubt, but the sequence of events is a little disturbing. I think, first of all, the fact that a few people had been killed before or around the time when this person went to the Supreme Court. I think one driver was killed, one aide was killed, right? So, and he had a genuine fear, at least he expressed a genuine fear that he's going to be wiped out on the way, if nothing else, from Gujarat to Uttar Pradesh. That didn't happen. Perhaps it didn't happen because it would have been too obvious if he had been killed on the way in some kind of an encounter. So really, the Supreme Court perhaps felt that maybe the Uttar Pradesh, the UP High Court, Allahabad High Court would be in a better position to deal with it. But I think it would have been appropriate if the Supreme Court had been a little more cautious, in disposing of his case, right? Perhaps got an assurance from the police that we are going to look after him, whether it's on the way or whether it's while he's in custody. I think maybe that one step forward could have been taken by the Supreme Court.
In other words, the Supreme Court, in disposing of this special plea for protection, should have actually got an assurance from the police in writing at least, or at least in open court, we will protect him. We give a guarantee he will not be endangered whilst he's in our custody. That assurance should have been obtained.
Yeah, it should have been obtained given the sequence of events that had taken place in the recent past.
Let me go one step further. A newspaper report today suggests that after the Supreme Court refused to grant him the protection he'd sought, he then approached the Chief Judicial Magistrate, I believe of Prayagraj, but I'm saying that from memory, and asked for a video conferencing opportunity to make his plea, which was turned down by the Chief Magistrate. That's another level at which the system of justice let this man down when he needed protection.
Yes. But I don't know. I think given the sequence of events that had taken place, I think the justice system should have been a little more cautious. Either this person was just pulling a fast one and giving an exaggerated account of the threat to his life, or there was something to it, right? Maybe exaggerated, but something to it. Now, something to it is possible because of what has happened in the past, namely one aide being killed, the driver being killed, right? Now, these things should have, cautioned the justice system that, listen, let's not take any chance. Let's get an assurance from the police.
So much, Justice Lokur, hinges on the sequence of events, as you call it. Let me, in fact, recite them because I think they're critical. The Indian Express reports, and so does the Hindu separately, that 6 people, not one, but 6 closely connected with Atiq Ahmed have been killed since February, and mainly in encounters. The first was his driver Arbaz, who was shot in an encounter on the 27th of February. Then an aide called Usman in an encounter on the 6th of March. Then his son Asad and a colleague Ghulam in an encounter on the 13th of April. And therefore, all 4 of these were killed in encounters. And then finally, on Saturday, Atiq and Ashraf in these very strange, inexplicable circumstances. Is this killing of 6 people a coincidence, or does it itself provide credible grounds for suspicion?
Well, it can't be a coincidence. Maybe one person gets killed, 2 persons get killed. Perhaps that can be passed off as a coincidence. But 6 people getting killed, and including Atiq, I think it's 7. It can't be a coincidence. If it's a coincidence, it's too much of a coincidence, right? So yeah, but like you said, there's something much more to it than meets the eye, and it needs to be thoroughly investigated.
Now, the amazing thing, Justice Lokur, is these killings have happened at a time when both the Prime Minister and the UP Chief Minister are proudly proclaiming that Uttar Pradesh has the best law and order in the country. How severely does this undermine or even deflate these proud boasts?
Well, it's like this, like I said, this is perhaps the first instance, at least I'm not aware of any other instance, where a person in police custody is killed by a third person, right? Now, that by itself is terrible because it means that the police cannot protect the people. Now, if that is the position that the police cannot protect the people, well, then, what kind of a law and order situation are you talking about? What kind of safety of citizens are you talking about? I mean, he was to be protected by the police, but was not, or was not adequately protected, so that a third person could come and kill him.
Now, a lot of people on social media have welcomed, in some cases, they've applauded Saturday night's killings because the argument goes they believe that this is how gangsters and this is how men who have themselves killed should be treated. In fact, the Uttar Pradesh finance minister, a gentleman called Suresh Khanna, has called this divine justice. How do you respond to such views?
Well, the rule of law has to take precedence. You can't say that, listen, let's just bump off some people because we know he's guilty or we think he's guilty. If that was the position, then these persons who committed the murder on camera should have been shot dead or would have been shot dead by the police right then and there. But they were not. Okay. So you can't have two standards and say that, well, for some people, an encounter is the right way to, dispense justice. But for others, well, let the law take its own course, kind of thing. You can't have these double standards.
It's reported that Atiq Ahmed faces over 100 criminal charges. He's already been convicted in a kidnapping case. Given this background, are shortcuts in bringing him to justice understandable, or are they a denial of his constitutional rights and an undermining of our democracy?
Well, it's like this, Karan, it's a different topic altogether, but I think that our justice delivery system needs to be speeded up. How can you have a situation where a person is accused in 100 cases and convicted only in one of them? And since when? I mean, it's not as if he was born yesterday as a criminal. He's been there for a long time. Why is it that, delivering justice takes so much of time? Because it takes so much of time, the police perhaps find it as a shortcut to just have an encounter and finish it off. All right. And then people say, of course, they will say that, yeah, he deserved it, because he's a crook. But then whether he's a crook or not should have been determined many years ago. Why wait for 100 cases to pile up? Why wait for even 10 cases to pile up? Just speed up everything. I think this is the biggest problem.
But you're also saying, aren't you, Justice Lokur, that even a man who faces 100 criminal charges has a right to due process of law, and he has the right to be not killed as a shortcut to justice?
Yes. Everybody has a right, whether he has 100 cases or whether he has, 5 cases. Everybody has a right. And we have shown that. If you remember in the case of Kasab, we had a proper trial. We had an appeal.
Quite right. Kasab and the way we tried him made us as a nation and made our judicial system as an example of how effective it can be very proud.
Yeah.
Ashraf and Atiq make our system and unfortunately even our judicial system embarrassed. Let's put it mildly.
Yeah. I would go along with that, yes.
On the 25th of February, Yogi Adityanath said in the UP Assembly, and I'm quoting him, "Mafia ko mitti mein mila denge." As a judge, how do you respond to that sentiment?
Yeah, I think it's it's very unfortunate, very unfortunate to say something like this. Yeah, it's not good at all, because that's an indication that there is something wrong with the rule of law or with our justice system.
An indication that there is something wrong with the rule of law and our justice system.
Yeah.
Finally, the Hindu newspaper reports that there have been over 10,900 police encounters since 2017 when Yogi Adityanath became Chief Minister of UP. Those 10,900 plus encounters, by the way, are the encounters that happened in UP, not nationwide, since he became Chief Minister. And the UP police have separately confirmed, and again, I'm relying on the Hindu, that 183 alleged criminals have been shot and killed in those encounters. Against this background, a plea has been filed in the Supreme Court on Sunday to set up an independent committee headed by a retired Supreme Court judge to probe these encounters and deaths, including the death of Atiq and Ashraf. Do you think the court should agree?
Well, we already have a body called the National Human Rights Commission. It is their job to look into this. Why is it not being looked into? I mean, if the figure is correct that there have been 10,000 encounters and 183 deaths, that's far too many, far too many. What has the State Human Rights Commission been doing about it? What has the National Human Rights Commission been doing about it? I mean, is it that they are supposed to be dysfunctional and therefore you need a committee appointed by the Supreme Court? Why can't they do their job, which is being entrusted to them by Parliament, by law?
You're leaving me with one conclusion, which I'll put to you just to understand whether you agree with it or not. If really in one state there can have been 10,900 plus encounters in just 6 years, with 183 encountered deaths, then doesn't it suggest, and worse still, if the process of bringing people to justice is so slow that the population applauds encounters when they happened as the quickest way of solving the thing, doesn't that suggest there is something seriously wrong with the Indian system of justice?
There is. Like I said, it takes too much of time. Okay. It's not only applauding, but giving them laddus or garlanding them.
Absolutely.
So yeah, how can we tolerate all this, and say that, yeah, everything is fine. The law will take its own course. The law is not taking its own course.
Shakespeare put it beautifully when he said, there is something rotten in the state of Denmark. All we need to do is change Denmark to India, and Shakespeare would be correct again.
Yeah. Something rotten, not something wrong, something rotten.
Something rotten. Absolutely, sir. Thank you for the correction. I thank you for this interview, Justice Lokur. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, thank you, Karan. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.